Good morning, good afternoon, good night, everybody. We are back again with another section of Thus Spoke Zarathustra. It's been a hot minute. Oh, yes. Let's start strong with the alpha male monkey. Return to monkey grunts. Let's get a good.
Ow! 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 Ow!
Fucking get that power ramped up. Feel the testosterone boiling in your blood. Just take the deep breath with us, everybody. Just feel it. Just feel the power of the breath.
I'm feeling grounded already.
Powerful. We're going to be talking a lot about breathing and instincts and the fundamentals of life to which maybe we've become too disconnected from, and what possible problems that could be that could underlie such a problem. Anyways, we're going to start with a strong reading. I'm going to read part of this. Where we are in the book, this is Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Friedrich Nietzsche. We are on page 192, On the Mount of Olives. Winter, an ill guest, sits in my house. My hands are blue from his friendly handshake. I honor him, this ill guest, but I am glad to let him sit alone. I gladly run away from him, and if you run well, you can escape him. With warm feet and warm thoughts do I run yonder where the wind is still, to the sunny corner of my Mount of Olives. There I laugh at my stern guest, and I am still fond of him, for he drives the flies away and silences many little noises for me at home. 4. He will not permit even a gnat to buzz about, far less two gnats, and he makes the streets lonely, so that the moonlight is afraid there at night. He is a hard guest, but I honor him, and do not pray to a fat-bellied fire idol as the weaklings do. Rather a little chattering of the teeth than idol worship. So my nature will have it, and I especially detest all lustful, steaming, musty fire idols, for whom I love better in winter than in summer. I now mock my enemies better and more heartily, since winter sits in my home. Heartily in truth, here, or even when I crawl into bed, even there, my hidden happiness laughs and grows wanton. Even my deceptive dreams laugh. I, a crawler? Never in my life have I crawled before the powerful, and if I ever lied, I lied from love. For that reason I am joyful even in my winter bed. A meager, is that meager?
Meager.
Yeah, a meager, okay, thank you, sir. A meager bed warms me more than an opulent one, for I am jealous of my poverty, and it is most faithful to me in the winter. I start each day with a wickedness. I mock winter with a cold bath. My stern house companion grumbles at that. I also like to tickle him with a wax candle, so that he may finally let the sky emerge from an ash gray dawn. For I am especially wicked in the morning, at the early hour when the bucket clatters, and the well, and the horses neigh warmly in gray streets. When I wait impatiently until the luminous sky at last dawns for me. The snowy bearded winter sky, the winter haired ancient sky, the silent winter sky that often conceals even its sun. Did I learn long, luminous silence from it, or did it learn it from me? Or did each of us devise it himself? The origin of all good things is thousandfold. All good wanton things spring for joy into existence. How should they do that? Once only? Long silence is also a good, wanton thing. And to gaze like the winter sky from a luminous, round-eyed contentence. Contentious. Con- Contentance. Like it, to conceal one's sun and one's inflexible sun will. Truly, I have learned well this art in this winter wantonness.
It is my favorite wickedness and art that my silence has learned not to betray itself by silence. Rattling words and dice have I outwitted the solemn attendants. My will and purpose shall elude all stern watchers, so that no one might see down into my profundity and ultimate will. That is why I devised my long, luminous silence. I have found so many shrewd men who veiled their faces and troubled their waters, so that no one might see through them and under them. But the shrewder distrusters and nutcrackers came straight to them. Straightway they fished out their best hidden fish. But the clear, the honest, the transparent, they seem to me the shrewdest silent men. Those whose profundity is so deep that even the clearest water does not betray it. You, snowy-bearded winter sky, you round-eyed, white-haired sky above me, O you heavenly image of my soul and its wantonness. And do I not have to hide myself, like one who has swallowed gold, so that my soul shall not be slit open? Do I not have to wear stilts, so that they may not notice my long legs? All those envious and injurious people around me, those reeky, cozy, worn-out, mouldy, woe-begone souls, how could their envy endure my happiness? So I show them only ice and winter on my peaks, and not that my mountain also wins all the girdles of sunlight around it. They hear only the whistling of my winter storms, and not that I also fare over warm seas. Like passionate, heavy, hot south winds, they even pity my accidents and chances. But my doctrine is, let chance come to me. It is as innocent as a little child. How could they endure my happiness if I did not put accidents and the miseries of winter and fur hats and coverings of snow clouds around my happiness? If I did not myself pity their pity, the pity of these envious and injurious people? If I myself did not sigh and let my teeth chatter in their presence, and patiently let myself be wrapped up in their pity? This is the wise wantonness and benevolence of my soul. It does not hide its winter and frosty storms, neither does it hide its chilblains. For one person, solitude is the escape of an invalid. For another, solitude is an escape from the invalids. Let them hear me chattering and sighing with winter cold, all these poor squint-eyed knaves around me. With such sighing and chattering have I escaped their heated rooms. Let them pity me and sigh with me over chilblains. He will yet freeze to death on the ice of knowledge, so they wail. In the meantime I run with warm feet hither and thither upon my Mount of Olives. In the sunny corner of my Mount of Olives do I sing and muckle pity. Thus sang Zarathustra.
There we go. What a beautiful passage. A lot of strong contempt and philosophies to digest in this one. I think I want to start by talking about the other individuals in his story here that are in the warm house, that are showing maybe not contempt, but as he says, envy towards him being out in the cold, being out in something that to them is in an uncomfortable place. Now, this as a metaphor, I guess, would serve well for people who have become very comfortable in their ideologies, in their philosophies, and who are content with the way they think, how, why they think, and all of that, and they don't want to wander into the cold or the unknown or the uncomfortable of, let's say, maybe they're wrong. And so they pity him, as he says, for his accidents and chances. But I think that what he's saying is you have to live in that, you have to become comfortable in the uncomfortable, for that's where growth really happens. What do you think?
Yeah, so one of the things that came to my mind was like David Goggins. When he goes for a run or something, he's actually excited when it's raining, when it's hotter than anyone could withstand, or it's colder than anyone could withstand. He views that as the perfect challenge, or the perfect day to run. Because when it's, 70 degrees with a breeze, it's easy to run. But it's not so hard, or it's not so easy to get out of your bed when it's 10 degrees outside, it's ice everywhere, it's snowing, and go for a run. And, these creature comforts we all love when it's hot. We have our AC on. When it's cold, we have our heating on. You know, how is that going to strengthen you or make you a stronger person if every adversity that comes your way, there's an answer or a solution in order to fix it? Why not become the stronger person to withstand the cold, withstand the heat, and be able to do, um, what you're willing to do in those sort of harsh environments? I feel like that's where real growth comes from, and where you really understand what kind of person you are. And I think it's another reason why we're drawn to, having cold showers, challenging ourselves, because that's where growth really happens. It's not when it's cold outside and you put the fireplace on, the heating on, you've got your fuzzy socks on and you're all comfortable. It's deciding for yourself that you're going to go out, face the cold, overcome your fear of, being chilly, and really overcoming that weakness within yourself.
Yeah, if I can add, I'm going to tie it back to an earlier point where he says, I do not pray to a fat-bellied fire idol as the weaklings do. Where you kind of dissect that as, okay, well, fat-bellied, so it's someone who is constantly well-fed, never really has to struggle for food, very, very, passive. And then fire to me is warmth, it's comfort, it's relaxed, it's a state of, I don't know, there's no adversity, there's no pushing or testament to what one is capable of. I had another point too about something earlier you said. I wish I wrote it down because today my brain is not as fast as I would like it to be. But it was something to do with the creature comforts that you were bringing up, our comfortability,
Hmm.
where we stand, and how instead of so being comfortable in almost every aspect of our life all the time, it makes you ungrateful. Let's take that perspective. It does make you ungrateful towards existence. It makes you ungrateful and really kind of a bitch about a lot of things. I see it. I'm sure everyone can relate to this in some aspect, but I've had plenty of times where I encounter people who complain over what seem to be such petty and minuscule things, but they make a mountain out of an anthill, or and whatever the statement is. I forget what the metaphor is, but I believe that comes from being too comfortable, being at the heels and worshiping this fire idol of comfort. It kind of that's the path. That's the only path it's going to take you down. Is one where you're so used to being that comfortable all the time that even the slightest discomfort, and I mean slightest,
Mm.
or the slightest quote unquote problem that you have to overcome becomes such a nuisance, and you're so lazy. And I see it myself. I mean, it's a slight projection for sure on my behalf as well, but that's what I really wanted to bring up for discussion that came to mind.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something in today's modern society that we all are facing. Life has given us so many creature comforts that it becomes so easy in order to um, not challenge yourself, to become a weaker version of yourself. We have all these distractions from unlimited shows on Netflix to a plethora of video games, uh, social media, all of these other factors that we don't realize that we're dwindling so much time on, comparing ourselves to others or whatever it may be. Um, and I think, a common theme throughout this whole book is obviously the Overman, overcoming man itself. And honestly, it's in today's society that it's the biggest challenge because we have the most creature comforts of anyone before us. And saying that, you know, I'm gonna go back to what I was saying about, when it's raining outside, people are like, oh, it's the perfect day to stay inside, watch a movie. Or are you gonna be that person that goes, no, I'm gonna go for a run, I'm gonna go outside when other people are not willing to? And I think that's something we should strive towards in order to become the better version of ourselves. Because how are you going to better yourself when, like you said, any adversity that comes our way, we want to turn back to our comforts? Facing them head on, facing the beast, facing, this, sort of dreadful thing we put in our mind, like you said about making an anthill into a mountain. You know, we've discussed this before when we're trying to better ourselves, that, it's very easy to just do it. And you come up with all these excuses for why you can't, or a common excuse I hear all the time, I don't have the time. Make the time, you know? It's, you've got to be the person that pushes yourself forward. No one's going to come into your life and give you the recipe to becoming the best version of yourselves. You've got to want it, you've got to desire it, you've got to put yourself into situations that are going to take you out of your comfort zone and make you less fearful of this thing we call life,
I'm gonna use an analogy that I believe David Goggins uses, but so the mind is a powerful tool, but it's a double-edged sword. It can be used for your benefit, but also for your loss. And so the analogy I want to bring up is think of the mind as a sword, and think of sharpening the sword in preparation for handling adversities. And think of each adversity as a continuation of sharpening that sword for the next one. And so if you think about it like that, then what comes to mind is you pushing yourself slowly, one step at a time. If I'm looking at a ladder or a staircase, I'm not going to jump to the 10th step. I'm looking and taking each step that's in front of me as I'm at that step. But the point is that to get the more you push yourself, even in the slightest bit now, the sharper your sword, the sharper your mind, and better prepared you are for the bigger adversities in life, the bigger tragedies, the bigger whatever unfortunate circumstance lies before all of us. Because I think that's the ultimate truth of existence: is life is tragic, life is suffering. What are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do? What's your perspective? And so that's what I want to go off on, actually, another point about perspective, because in this section there's actually the whole thing is powerful difference between Nietzsche or Zarathustra's perspective of the mountain and of the winter, and the what he calls weaklings perspective of the mountain in the winter. But that was my analogy before I do that was my analogy with the mind being a powerful tool like a sword. What do you think about that? Like, every adversity you come across strengthens your sword more for the next one, and will better equip you for the bigger tragedies that may come your way.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's really going towards, what we've been talking about is, uh, you know, when you see adversity, that should bring a smile to your face because you get to challenge yourself. Or even like with the anthill into a mountain, when say you're trying to learn an instrument, guitar, piano, and you're looking at a very difficult piece, and you look at it as an overall, it's gonna seem impossible, unachievable. And I think Socrates, or an early philosopher, discussed this, that you have to break it into parts, You've got to learn the first 3 notes. And then when you get to 50 notes, you're going to think that you have a better chance of succeeding than you would have if you looked at the overall piece and said, that's impossible. I'm not going to be able to learn that. But if you start learning each note individually, up and up and up, it's going to give you a much better hope for being able to succeed. So, I mean, we can relate that to so many things, If you're overweight or leading a sedentary lifestyle, then just going on a 5-minute walk rather than being like, I'm gonna go to the gym 2 hours a day, I'm gonna run 5 miles a day, I'm gonna do this, small steps. And what you were saying about, the steps, you don't want to look at jumping to the 10th step, it's one step at a time. So I think, uh, sharpening your sword in a way where you're not trying to get the sharpest blade immediately, but it'll take quite some time to get a blade that can cut through paper. You're gonna have to sharpen that sword for quite some time. You don't just get a blunt sword and do one stroke with a whetstone and it's all good.
Yes, for sure. The perspective that I wanted to share and discuss with you was I'm trying to find it on this website so that I can have the participation of the viewers here. But nonetheless, it's the fact that on the Mount of Olives, on these high mountains where the other people's perspective is that it's just too cold and too harsh and it's dark and it's bleak, and they have all these negative energy charged perspectives of what a situation appears to be to them, where Nietzsche, approaching it with warm feet and warm thoughts, which is a good metaphor, is looking at the mountain, and he realizes and he knows that there is sun that is shining even at the tops of the mountain, and that his Mount of Olives is up there. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the two different perspectives, and that can be said about a lot of adversity, whether it's literal physical adversity of the cold or adversity of life situations, with work or with people, whatever. It's just I really do believe that it starts with perspective first.
Yeah.
First is your perspective beforehand of how you're trying to assess the situation, and then you address it based on that initial perspective. So if you're already starting way behind by being that negative energy, by projecting that negative energy. You know what I mean? Even if a situation appears bleak, there's always a silver lining, a light shining there. And if you not attack, that's a bad word, but if you approach a situation from as possible an angle as you can get, you're already starting ahead and on the right foot, and will be better prepared. You know what I mean?
Exactly, and I think something that really needs to be instilled in a lot of people is, so many people believe that once they've attained riches, they'll be happy, or once they reach their dream, they'll be happy. But that's just not true. If you're not happy right now, even if you have $1 billion, everything you could have dreamed of, you're not going to be happy then. Sure, it'll make life easier, but your mind, your perspective is a determining factor of your happiness and what you find, most fulfilling. So, working on your happiness now rather than when you've achieved your goals. Like, in this section here, he says, I start each day with a wickedness, I mock winter with a cold bath.
Yes.
And I love that sentence, Oh, it's winter, I want a hot bath. No, I'm gonna get a cold one. Winter doesn't get to tell me what to do. He even says, my meager bed warms me more than an opulent one, for I am jealous of my poverty. That's a great sentence as well. No matter whether you're in the richest of beds with ornate gold around the bedposts, your bed is gonna warm you the same. And I just find your perspective is just so important in life, and your happiness is a determinant of that. If you're depressed or unhappy, whatever you think is gonna bring that happiness back, it's just on your own mindset. I've seen a homeless guy who was happier than a billionaire. So explain that if these materialistic things bring so much happiness.
Or yeah, explain that, science.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to come at me, science? Pow! Sidekick.
Top 10 answers science cannot, or top 10 questions science still can't answer.
Yeah. So
Bro, that was talking about fucking happy ass people that have like that appear to have nothing, but really they have everything. I got on final. I was with my parents when we were watching Final Jeopardy, and I outsmarted everyone there because the topic was ancient Greek philosophers, and do you want? I'm gonna ask you the question, and let's see how fast you can answer this. But the question on the Final Jeopardy was ancient. The subject was ancient Greek philosophers, and the question was, who did Aristotle or I forget who, Aristotle or Plato, say was was Socrates, but fuck, I forget what the question was, but like Socrates, but like but crazier. Who's like the crazier Socrates? Do you know what the Do you know who it was?
well, I think all philosophers are a little bit crazy, you know.
Yeah. But like in Greek philosophy, who was the crazy motherfucker that made fun of Aristotle with a naked chicken and lives in barrels and pisses in the street?
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Diogenes, baby.
Diogenes, yes, sir.
The ultimate cynic, the one who told Alexander the Great. If people don't know this story, let me shine
Yeah,
some
yeah,
light
yeah.
on one of the edgiest, fucking funniest philosophers of all time, Diogenes, king of the cynics. Um, this man was so happy and so content with life, and decided he didn't need anything that society had to offer. That he at one point he thought all he needed was a bowl to drink water, and he saw a kid on the riverside drinking with his hands, and he laughed at himself, threw the bowl away, and said, "How ridiculous could I have been?" But the other funny thing was he became so famous for being so cynical and like edgy with everyone, sleeping in the streets in barrels, pissing like a dog, eating foods in the market, making fun of people. Um, but not just making fun of people, but like destroying them, like Socrates does with his mighty big brain. But one day, Alexander the Great approaches him and says, "Oh, Diogenes, I've heard so many stories. If I were not me, I would be you. Please tell me, what do you desire? Your wish is my command. I will give you whatever I have the power to give you." And this man, Diogenes, says right back to Alexander the Great, "Get out of my sunlight." And that's it. I don't know. It was one of the craziest dudes ever. Like if you read about him, he's just a wild card. Um, but that's exactly what you're saying. Like I don't care what people say. This man was happier than anyone I've ever read about or heard about. Obviously, I didn't experience him firsthand, but I know it to be true. Is just your perspective.
Yeah,
Is your perspective that you don't have enough, even though you have a fucking private helicopter and 3 Lamborghinis? Then you're going to be suffering. You know what I mean? Because of your worldly attachments and what your perspective is. Is your perspective, I'm going to live as bare bones as possible because I don't need to rely on anything like this man, Diogenes? You're going to be fucking happy wherever the hell you are. So gotta start with perspective.
exactly. And I think perspective just comes from appreciating the small things you have. Like, I think that's something that Diogenes really, you know, he was just happy with his own being and didn't
With
depend
his
on
homies,
anything
bro.
else. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you need to dive to the level of Diogenes, but
No one
also,
can. No. Hold on. Rephrase that, buddy. We're not diving, as in going down to reach his level. He is far above us.
yeah, okay. Uh, but I think the moral of the story is, if you're not happy or your perspective is skewed, try just appreciating the simple things and challenging yourself and overcoming what you thought would be impossible for yourself. And I'm almost 100% certain that your perspective will shift, you'll start feeling much better about yourself and much more hopeful about the things that you can achieve. Um, just from simple things like we talked about, like having a cold bath in the winter to laugh at winter's face, you know?
Yeah. Oh well, that's the other thing too that I wanted to bring up with the when you with you bringing up depression is, listen, it's not fully, it's an unfortunate culmination of both nurture and nature. We are not disagreeing that depression and anxiety and all of these things are from like a place of biology, but what we're saying is that there's definitely a good portion of it that is influenced by society. Whether you want to think about the, well, I'm not even going to go into any studies, but point is that um, beyond what you think is impossible, you can definitely change the state of mind you are in by what I would say is getting back to basics, getting back to the things that we take for granted, like breathing or like sleeping, or basics with understanding the human being in terms of instincts as combination of instincts and rationality. That if you were to go back, if you go back to the basics and you try and understand and what you're doing, you'd be surprised how much of a difference it makes in your life by changing and actually returning to what is objectively good, whether that's good sleep, quality sleep, from 10 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock in the morning, getting up, or breathing properly. I don't think a lot of people realize that they're actually not breathing the right way, not taking full deep breaths. And if you want to consult the expert Wim Hof himself,
Yeah,
I mean,
we
I can go into it, but
we both highly recommend Wim Hof breathing, I'd say.
yes, I've seen fundamental change, like beyond the physiological changes that the style of breathing that he does and teaches. Not just him, I mean, it's like ancient yoga. Like, he's not the founder of any of this is just things he's bringing to light so we all can kind of understand. But besides the physiological changes, because there are physiological changes with the immune system improvement just based on breathing, um getting back to the basics of that, you can realize that with higher oxygen intake in the blood. I'm trying to like close the point here because I'm just going on a fucking tangent again.
Well, I
But
think, yeah,
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 go
I,
for it,
I
go
I
for it.
think basically what we're striving towards is becoming better versions of ourselves, and we're willing to try anything in order to do that. So, so Wim Hof breathing, improving our blood, oxygenating it so we can think better, have more oxygen, being able to, um, breathe in a cold environment and warming our own bodies. Basically, a lot of this stuff all relates back to Nietzsche's Overcoming Man, and I've found a little section here that is quite nice.
Is this still in the same passage or a different
Yeah,
passage?
same passage. So he talks about his, uh, how could people endure his happiness,
Yes.
because his happiness basically does not involve, um, you know, the miseries of winter and fur hats and covering of snow clouds, and I really think he's talking about is, if it's winter, his happiness does not involve putting on a fur hat, getting warm and all this. So how could other people endure that happiness? That's what's bringing him happiness, is that the environment that he's in is not putting a a wedge into his happiness. If it's freezing cold outside, uh, he's not saying that that's gonna turn his day into a miserable day. He's gonna challenge that day, and that's gonna bring him happiness, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I see that towards the end too. There's a lot of really powerful quotes. I mean, the whole thing is powerful, but even towards it. So let me dive into a few things that I am struggling to understand and see if you can give clearer input here. But on page 194, talking about, I'm gonna read here. But I have found so many shrewd men who veiled their faces and troubled their waters, so that no one might see through them and under them. But the shrewder distrusters, and nutcrackers came straight to them. Straightway they fished out their best hidden fish. But the clear, the honest, the transparent, they seem to me the shrewdest silent men. Those whose profundity is so deep that even the clearest waters does not betray it. I'm trying to understand that, because the interpretation I'm getting here is that at the beginning he's talking about shrewd men who veil their face, so cover themselves and trouble their waters. So let's imagine that's taking a Carl Jung perspective, that the mind is an ocean or a body of water, and so these people, these shrewd men, are trying not so that no one might see through them and under them, so they're
Yeah,
trying to hide themselves.
yeah, they're donning a mask. So, you know, you can think about someone who's miserable but wearing a happy
Okay.
face as a facade, I would say.
Okay. Continue though if you have more, because I'm trying to, because he
Okay,
also uh-huh
so the shrewder distrusses nutcrackers came straight to them. Straightway they fished out their best fish. Um, So the clear, the honest, the transparent, they seem to be the shrewdest silent men, those whose profundity is so deep that even the clearest waters. So yeah, I guess it's a bit of a jumble of words here. The clear, the honest, the transparent. Um, what I do like is saying that their profundity is so deep that the clearest waters not betray them. Um,
mm-hmm.
so I suppose, is this a metaphor for fishing, that even if the water is so clear that they can see all the fish, they still, like, they can't see any fish, that they would still fish in it?
Yeah, I'm getting mixed interpretations here. I'm gonna try and bring it up too and see what the people have to say here. Let's see, where does it start here? So it must be somewhere around here for the people.
Well, honestly,
like to read along.
I think you need to read this like whole section to understand it, because a little later on he goes on to say, "I do not have to hide myself. I do not have to wear stilts so that people may not notice my long legs." You know, a lot of it I think is just donning a mask in order to appease the people around you. That, per se, so many of us, yes, so many of us don a mask in order to appease those around us. You know,
Mm-hmm.
not wanting to say things that are out of line, not to say things that would, you know, cause a conundrum in their perspective and their way of thinking. To be a, you know, to become the Ubermensch, right? In order to do that, you have to surpass man and think, you know, solely for becoming a better version than the man that have come before you. So I think really what he's trying to say here is, yeah, being truthful to yourself, perhaps, donning the mask that you have, not a mask that you don in order to appease society's way of what's normal or what is the norm. And really, I think that's another thing about happiness, right? Is how are you to be happy when you don a mask that isn't truly yours?
Mm-hmm.
Don your mask, own it, and become the person you're supposed to be.
Another Nietzschean, more Nietzsche wisdom is become who you are. Yes. Also, that also ties into later down there. You can also see, how could their envy endure my happiness? So now that you have enlightened me, it's clear these people, these others, are envious of Zarathustra because he is free and happy to be himself. He needs nothing else but himself.
Yes.
He's not donning, he's not pretending, he's not playing, he's not succumbing to the wills. Like he says later, or earlier, he's not crawling for anyone that's more powerful. He himself is his own power and his own light. And so they envy him. But how could their envy endure his happiness is a testament to how insanely like happy and enlightened and free he is, which is powerful. Okay. That's
Yeah.
great. That's
Because it's
powerful.
like, who's to say that you're not a king? You know, it's only a
Yeah.
title.
That's fucking right. Do you hear that, everyone that's
Yeah.
listening? You are a king. You are a queen. You're a girl boss. You have to assert yourself that these things are true because they are true. And that's the first perspective. And boom, then you are a king. That's it. BDE, baby. If you know what it means, you know what it means. Even the end too is quite fun too, because you have here towards really the end, which you just read as well, but I didn't really comment too much on. Okay, one thing is pity. So you'll notice he really does not like pity, and I can understand, because I think pity is a very weak idea. Pity being pity is not the same, nowhere close to the same as like sympathize or empathizing with your fellow human being. Pity is to feel sorrow or sorry for. Pity is seeing someone in what you would think is an unfortunate circumstance, and you feel sorry for them. What that means is that you are belittling their experience. You don't know what they're going through. You are not them, and you're not going through whatever they're going through as they are going through it. You take whatever suffering you see that another person is doing, and you're belittling it by with pity. So I really do appreciate that he is dismantling pity, because it really is a disturbing and not useful thing, I think, for each other, because it doesn't empower anybody to feel. It doesn't empower the person I'm pitying if all I'm doing is, oh, I'm sorry you had to go through that. Oh, that must suck. Oh, like with all these fake words and bullshit kind of. It's not real empathy. It's not really, if you really care about the person who you are quoting, whoever you're pitying, what you would actually do is you would empower them. You would embrace and help them embrace their situation and help them overcome themselves and overcome whatever situation they're in. You know what I mean? So I think pity is crazy.
Yeah, so just continuing on with that, we've got a little section at the end here. Let them hear me chattering and sighing with winter cold. All these poor squint-eyed knaves around me, with such sighing and chattering have I escaped their heated rooms. So, from what I'm gathering from this is, I'm envisioning, a room with a group of people around a fire, all miserable that it's so cold outside. They're all chattering. They're going, "Oh, it's so cold, it sucks, like when's summer gonna come?" And this man here is going, "I'm sick of this. I'm sick of being in this fireplace room. Everyone's miserable. I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna leave the comfort of this heated room and go out, because I can't stand this anymore." And he's becoming, it's like what we talked about in the very beginning. When it's cold outside, 99% of people are gonna go, "Oh, I can't run today, it's freezing." You go out there and you run, and I think that's a very nice section there, is that he would rather freeze to death than to sit around this little fireplace being a weakling and pitying himself.
But the thing is there isn't even really a possibility that he's gonna freeze to death, because he already has the solution for it's not even a problem, but he already has the methods to move forward. The methods are: I run with warm feet, hither and thither upon my Mount of Olives. In the sunny corner of my Mount of Olives do I sing and mock all pity. So he has what he needs, and so do they, but they just don't know. They're either forgetting or they don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
Mhm.
what I was gonna say is that, Wim Hof, perfect example of that. That man is in board shorts on the base of Mount Everest, having a little stroll up to the top. He said, "Oh, people get cold. I'm gonna figure out a way where you can not get cold." And he, developed his Wim Hof breathing, and he can be in sub-freezing temperatures and keep his body temperature up. I mean, if that's not the definition of an overman, overcoming nature itself and developing your body to become stronger, I think that's just a really inspiring take on all of this.
A little side note for anyone who is new to Wim Hof. his wife committed suicide and was severely depressed, his first wife. And this is what pushed him over the edge to try and figure out a way to help people, is because instead of him succumbing to like other people's pity and feeling sorry for himself or pitying himself in a situation, he overcame his situation. He embraced what was. Now, obviously, that the tragedy is magnitudes greater than anything I've ever experienced, and I hope not to experience anything like that. But what's important is that he took it upon himself to try and embrace this and improve not just himself, but whoever he could help. And he did this with discovering ancient techniques. Now, I want to be clear. I said it before, but he is not really he did not find these techniques. Like, you can, if you read ancient Eastern philosophy, you'll see that a lot of these monks that have been training under like Zen Buddhism, or different schools of Buddhism, or even before Buddhism, all these monks have been practicing these breathing techniques, hardcore meditations, and they've yielded the same things he's doing. There's been plenty of documented encounters where monks can alter their internal body temperatures with meditation and breath work. So it's not to say that he founded it, but I would say that he's just kind of again passing the torch passing the torch to all of us. But besides that little side note, with Wim Hof, I think that like you said, the power comes from within. We are a literal combustion engine of heat. We produce heat. Our heart is if you want to think about a car, is the engine, right? And so what does your body need like a car need? It needs fuel. What's our fuel? Oxygen that gets into our blood, and the food for macros that we eat for calories. And if you just think about that, how important air is, I mean, you can go weeks without food, you can go days without water, but you can't go but a few minutes without oxygen. And I think the importance of oxygen we take it for granted. We don't really think about how important or how much of an influence it has on us. Where this is what you can do. I have it all the time when I run in the morning. Not that I'm on Mount Everest, but when I run in the morning in my shorts, it's 40 degrees outside. I'm actually sweating. All the old people walking their dogs at 6 in the morning, they're commenting, be careful, you're gonna get cold. It's too cold. How are you doing this? You're crazy. And I think a lot of people don't realize, like, all you have to do is if you start breathing deeper and more full, your heart rate will increase. Your body temperature goes up. That's it. It's that easy. That simple of a formula. That's it. But yeah, I don't know if you want to give any input on that. I kind of went on another tangent there, away from the text. Real quick though.
Yep.
Another important one is, for one person, solitude is the escape of an invalid. For another, solitude is escape from the invalid. So think about birds of a feather flock together. He is escaping from these invalid people, these fire idol worshiping people, these fat-bellied fire idol worshiping people sitting around a fire complaining. He is escaping because pure influence, as everyone knows, you are influenced heavily by the people you're surrounded by. Hence why the old adage is, if you're the biggest fish in the pond, you go to a bigger pond, because you don't want to be held back by your peers or influenced by peers that are, I don't want to say weaker than you, but that can't help you grow anymore. And so that's what he's doing here. Is solitude is a powerful tool for growth. When you're alone, when you're running, when you're just in solitude, not isolation. When you're in solitude, you have time to think, reflect, and grow. And so that's what he's doing here. Is he's escaping from the invalids that are negative and anti-productive, and he's going and doing his thing.
Yeah, that's great, man.
Hell yeah.
Well, let's wrap this up, and
Yeah.
I guess whomever's listening, I'd say we take a moment and come up with 3 things that we can take away from this passage for improving ourselves and getting another step closer to the Übermensch, the Overman.
Hell yeah, I love that. Yeah, more participation, please. Add to the discussion. We love it. Comment below whatever thoughts you have on your head. And how about this? How about we all comment, including ourselves, Ryan? Appreciations we have. The perspective. What are we grateful for today, or in general? Excuse me, or in general.
Yeah. Well, let's take a minute now, and then just come up with 3 small things that we took away from this, and that we can use moving forward. and then
Okay.
we'll have like a little 5-minute discussion and wrap this up.
Okay. Oh, and then I also want to tease a little fun idea about talking about instincts for like a few minutes and then close it out if we can.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Okay. I kind of already, I think I already have three things. So do you want me to start?
Yeah, yeah, you start.
Okay, let's start with the first thing that I took away from this section was clarity, honesty, transparency. Not lying to myself, not lying to other people, going with the truth as a superpower and being in the freedom that comes with that. That's powerful. The second thing would be to endure and make comfortable the uncomfortable. Push past your limits and grow as an individual. And the third thing I would that I've learned and took away or that I can relate to is the perspective. Is that perspective first? Whenever you're in a situation and maybe you're just anytime you think you're projecting negative energy, just stop for a second and ask yourself: Is this negative or is this positive? What kind of energy am I putting out into the universe? And why am I putting it out there? What am I afraid of, or what am I scared of? What are That's the same thing. But that's the third thing is that type of perspective shift is to be conscious, be more conscious of how you feel and how you're thinking. And then it will, if you actively engage with that and combat the negativity with positive energy, and you kind of make yourself that shining bright light, the shining sun, the center of your friend group, you'll see a great shift, a great change.
That's great. Um, yeah, I agree with all of that. And so my three words that I came up with is overcoming, perspective, and uncomfortable. So,
Mm.
um, for overcoming yourself, overcoming any of those thoughts in your head that are saying, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that. Overcome it, try your best, and see what happens afterwards. My second one is perspective. So shifting your perspective. You know, it's so easy to fall into a groove of your perspective, saying the world's against me or whatever else, but changing your perspective to a more hopeful one, to a more to a perspective that really makes you a shining sun, you know, that you can do anything that the people who are in their creature comforts, which leads me to my third one, which is, you know, striving for the uncomfortable. Yeah, you know, I don't want to strive towards, you know, playing video games, watching TV, and living a mundane life. You know, I want to, you know, strive forward, get into situations that make me uncomfortable so that I can attain growth and as a person, as a human, and keep pushing forward and trying to become better every day. You know, even with setbacks, you know, we all have those days where we just don't feel like doing anything or feeling lazy, and just trying to work on that, and, you know, not having excuses for why I can't do something when clearly I can.
Powerful. We appreciate everyone's time, including our own. Thank you, Ryan, for sharing. That was beautiful. I took away very similar vibes. Good, positive, undying optimism is key. That's a good way to sharpen the sword of your mind. Um,
Exactly.
One quick thing I wanted to end on was maybe a little teaser subject for a possible future podcast, which is because I don't want to lose this idea, is the realization of our past as a human being and all of the accumulation of evolution to this point, the magnitude of evolution and the influence it has over us now. So in other words, all of our instincts that have been sharpened for millennia to prepare us for, harsh conditions with weather and predatory animals that could kill us and our loved ones, all of these instincts that are so fine-tuned within us, that are deep within us.
Hmm.
What happens to a person like that, like ourselves, that become comfort creatures of comfort
Hmm.
and dull our senses, dull our instincts? Is it possible that this has a huge deal with or huge correlation with depression? you
Yeah.
know, or and examples I would give would be, um, you know, recently for me in a adrenaline junkie aspect where I could only really feel alive when I'm speeding on my motorcycle, and it was scary because it felt so good to have that rush of feeling alive, of not feeling numb and dead, you know, and like stagnant water. I felt like a rushing, roaring waterfall, and it was great. But what I realized is obviously it's dangerous and deadly, and I don't recommend that, and I'm going to stop doing it. But it was an interesting take where I realized, oh my God, these instincts we had were that would normally happen when there's a tiger that's approaching your encampment or a pack of wolves threatening you and your family, and you had to fight to the death. It was either you or them, and that these things you don't just put them on the shelf and forget about them and think they don't have that it's not going to have recourse on your life. So I don't know if you want to share thoughts on that, but I thought that was an interesting subject to discuss eventually later down the line.
Yeah, for sure. And I think back to instinctual, like, you know, we can't forget, like, when the Ice Age occurred, you know, that should have wiped out the human species entirely, and the fact that we're here today is like a 1% chance. You know, our ancestors overcame those terribly harsh conditions and moved forward and figured out a way to survive the harshest possible environment you can think of, in an environment that we were not suitable for, nor were we able to overcome, but somehow we did it. So I think that would be a great discussion, on instincts and maybe even how to get back to our primal selves a little bit. You know,
Yes.
as
Yeah.
you know, Jordan Peterson said, you know, you've got to become a savage or a beast and then tame it back, and that makes you a powerful person.
Listen, you got to become a savage, you know.
You gotta
I
be a
was-
savage. That's a lifestyle, boy.
Oh, come on, man. You know Canada, the Prime Minister. Oh, my God. I wish I could do his accent. He's a fucking funny guy.
Yeah. But yeah, let's wrap this up. This is great.
Cool.
Anyone who's listening, leave us your thoughts below. We'll get back to all of you. And yeah, thanks for tuning in.
That's right. Undying optimism and big dick energy, everybody. Let's go. Let's get this bread.
All right. Tune in out.